Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Barnes & Noble Catholic University. This evening we're welcoming David Flynn. And as you know, Catholics across the world, they've been challenged to find new ways to spread the faith. Author David Flynn has taken up this challenge by authoring 2 books. One more on the way this summer that uniquely combines Catholic theology with science fiction. David Flynn is an author with a strong background in science and theology and philosophy with master's degrees in both computer science and catechetics. He's had a lifelong interest in astronomy, as visitors can see from the huge telescope sitting in his living room. He is the owner of a trained cat who regularly performs at the parties held at his home. But beyond writing, his interests closely parallel the lead character Tom in his book series. Triathlon, ham radio, dancing, and ski instruction are lifetime passions. He lives, works, and writes in the D.C. metro area and does cybersecurity for a living. Writing Search for the Alien God has been a chance to explore the events that resulted as Christianity spread throughout the world, now expanded to all of space. People who ask if there is another book in the works always get the same answer. Is there another planet out there? So at this point, let's welcome Mr. David Flynn, who will be speaking with us this evening.
Thank you, guys. Well, guys, first let me thank you all for coming and braving the traffic. And my team who's worked so hard to put everything together today, and of course, CUA's lovely bookstore for having us. The important thing to remember in all of this stuff is that at the end of the day, the purpose of everything that we're doing as a team is really to try to increase the footprint of the church. And that's why the New Evangelism was so interesting to us. And creating books that fit into Catholic science fiction was interesting to us. So let me tell you a little bit about what the New Evangelization is, and then tell you a little bit about what we're doing as a team. New Evangelization, let me read you one of the quotes that kind of defines it, just so we can parse this. Pope Benedict XVI called for the reproposing of the gospel to those regions awaiting the first evangelization and to those regions where the roots of Christianity are deep, but who have experienced a serious crisis of faith due to secularization. The New Evangelization invites each Catholic to renew their relationship with Jesus Christ and His church. So to understand what makes the New Evangelism new, let's look at what's old. If you guys go home this weekend and you wait behind your front door and someone knocks and wants to tell you about Jesus, it probably will not be a Catholic. Might be a Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, or Seventh-day Adventist, but it will probably not be a Catholic. Catholics, sadly, have put a lot of effort into resaving the saved, and lately we could be better at it. Let me say this in a politically correct way. There are a lot of Catholic books out there that are only chosen by people who already have a high place in heaven. So the footprint of the church being advanced by further catechizing this already catechized person is small. But there's a huge community of people that haven't been reached at all. So for a lot of us, we create comfortable prisons, always waiting to go out and evangelize at some point, but it just really never gets there. Well, look at the message from the world. 50 Shades of Grey sold 14 million books and secured 3 movie deals. The last really big one that we had was Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's book. Movie came from our book, the Bible. The Bible outsold 50 Shades of Grey. And the net in the whole thing is, if you want a big movie, you got to have a big book. It just seems to be the way things work nowadays. And look at what's out in the movies. Almost no one preaches to unfriendly audiences. Yet the gospel contains 3 separate stories about reaching out to the lost. And they are, the woman who swept the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the prodigal son. You've all heard them. A lot of us are in young adult ministry. I was once in a young adult conference where one of the guys got up in front and he said, "Singles shouldn't just sit around and wait to be married." Boy, you hear a pin drop, because that's what we were all doing. There's a whole lot that you can do with your relationships to get people to come to your organization, your church. I remember being invited to a theater group run by a bunch of Mormons, and I could see how they were so nice to me that I might have joined their group and just evaluated the veracity of their theology later. A lot of people do that. Some people say, aren't the priests the evangelists? Well, certainly, but there are far too few of them. There are 256 priests in 68 parishes in Arlington and 290 priests for 140 parishes in Washington. And this doesn't count all of the other things that they have to do, like the schools and hospital and everything else that divides up their efforts. So for evangelism to be new, it must either be new in what is being delivered or how it's delivered. And I believe appropriately the laity should take a larger role in this. I also believe the delivery should be made to non-friendly audiences, but a way that's already been satisfactorily vetted. The way we've seen is, book goes to a movie. The secular world goes to space and science for their sense of inspiration and awe. But for them, space is godless. You will not go to any of the movies out now, and I've been to all of them, because the minute somebody sees something in space, they call us, "David, have you seen this? David, have you read that book?" And I have to go out and see it, of course, to comment. And yeah, it's one more thing that points back at us. There is no God in space in any of these things. Yes, I've seen Interstellar and Ultron. I've seen them all. The one we saw last was Ex Machina. One more crazy killer robot out killing humans. It's been the same since Battlestar Galactica. So perhaps, therefore, a truly new approach to evangelism might put God back into space, the very place where the atheist and agnostic folks look for their techno-truths. Wouldn't it be cool if the very people they're looking to for awe and inspiration were looking back at the very God that they rejected? And this isn't on my script, but let me just tell you the story, because you're going to like this. I was in one of these chats that I had to do. It was Amazon or Goodreads, I forget. They have author forums. And there was a big debate about the godlessness of space. And I came out and said, you guys clearly would all read a book where the Hobbit parted the Red Sea, but you would not read a book where Moses parted the Red Sea. And they said, well, yes. That's because Moses is religion and that's fantasy. And I said, so you place more confidence in the existence of the Hobbit than in Moses? Well, they absolutely despised me for this and launched a huge one-star attack on all my books, even setting up separate websites to do it. Goodreads, Amazon, everything. And even attacking people who reviewed us favorably. And then me at home. It was so bad that Amazon and Goodreads independently removed all of their reviews from both sites. And they had created alternate personas. They absolutely do not want God in space. And there is a high penalty to be paid by anyone who puts God there.
By whom? Who is that?
The atheist agnostic community that currently owns 95% of the genre. Well, let's get into it in questions, because I can expand upon this in some detail, because I have a number of personal experiences I think you all will find entertaining and different. All right. Let's tell you about the book, Search for the Alien God. It's the first book that came out. And the second book, Dangerous Alien Robot, we decided to title it that because in the story, the Apostolic Nuncio, when Raven comes up and says, I'd like a bishop and priest to take to my world, to bring the Catholic Church to my world, which Catholics believe would be needed for apostolic succession, the Apostolic Nuncio says, how do we know you're not just a dangerous alien robot? Well, it is a problem that you're going to run into if we had to evangelize beyond the border of what we currently understand to be the creation. Let's talk about the creation. Our galaxy is immeasurably huge. It's 100,000 light years across. 100,000 light years. And until about 1924, they thought that was the entire universe. It's only one light day to the end of our solar system. Our first probes have just passed through that. Voyager, all that stuff. November 23rd, 1924, Edwin Hubble showed that the nebula they'd always known about, like the Magellanic Clouds that you can see in the southern hemisphere, sailors knew about those for eons, but they didn't know what they were, showed those to be entire other communities of stars. George Lemaitre, a Belgian Catholic priest and physicist, established the Big Bang Theory. This is a Catholic priest who did this. So Catholics are very enrolled in the absolute core of the science that describes our everything. Today, the universe is said to be 13.83 billion years old, which creates a problem for the atheists who say the universe always was. Now, this is because of something called the Wilkerson Microwave Anisotropic Probe that went up in 2001. In 2003, the data came back, which showed this big thing you've seen on the Discovery Channel, which is a big green and blue kidney bean. That's the picture of the microwave universe, the baby picture. They can reel the clock back and figure out when the Big Bang must have occurred, and it's 13.83 billion years ago precisely, which means the universe always wasn't. Now here's the catch. Atheists have always said, as one of the fundamental tenets, if you Christians can say God always was, we'll just say the universe always was. This has been a fundamental tenet to establish no need to resolve the unmoved mover concept that's provided by early Catholic theologians like Aquinas and others who've shown a need to have an unmoved mover, Augustine, etc., to establish that something must have set all this into motion. Atheists could dodge that by saying the universe always was. Now we know it always wasn't. So atheism essentially has been stricken its biggest death blow by science. Agnosticism is still in full force, but it's different from atheism. Carl Sagan is a perfect atheist. There's nothing in this universe but this universe, is one of the things he's famous for saying. Considering this fantastically large distance scale, how would finding life in another world affect the Catholic Church, bearing apostolic succession in mind? Would God need to die in every alien world that might have life? Or would his death redeem all of creation? Now, it's possible that if the approach I took in the book, which was to say God's death redeemed all of creation, there would need to be some way of getting creation to know that God was somewhere in the universe. And the way it was done in our world was the burning bush story. There could be a burning bush in every other world that God wanted to save people from, to say, I'm here. I'm just not on your planet. You're going to have to cross space. So if there was a burning bush, it would raise some fantastically interesting questions. And this is one of the things, again, I got in another debate in an online forum with. Because we could sit down logically and say, what would happen if you're in an alien world, you're looking at a bush, it's burning but not burning, it says to you, God has come, died in another world, it's not yours, you need to cross space to find it. So like Noah, you need to build a ship. Like the Magi, you need to follow a star. And just as the Jews were a chosen people, the earth is a chosen world. So we need you to go out. Now, he could turn his giant dish toward the earth and listen to all the radio signals and figure out which religions were there. And he wouldn't need to consider the Muslims or the Jews because they're still waiting for the 12th Imam and the Savior, officially. The Mormons could probably get eliminated also because they have a traveling God, right, who came to visit the Mormons in the desert after he got done with the Promised Land. So if God's going to travel to every place, there's no need for you to travel. But the bush is telling you you have to go, which means there's an importance in being there, and that really focuses you on the idea of apostolic succession. We as Catholics alone have that. The importance of maintaining the lineage. If the Spirit could just move to any place and set up a valid church, well then, we'd all be Protestants. Someone said, David, you've given this a lot of thought. Yeah. Now, considering my diagram here, here's our local group. Here's the Milky Way. Out here is Andromeda. Andromeda has 600 billion stars. There are 200 billion in our galaxy. There are 170 billion galaxies. Let's say we haven't found them all, maybe the 300 billion, because that was just from one Hubble shot, a 2-week deep field shot. They guesstimated. 300 billion times 100 billion. That's 22 zeros. Yeah, maybe God made all that real estate and put nothing in it. But maybe not. Maybe not. Tell you what, can we do a demo? Can I get some volunteers? I need a galaxy. Raise your hand if you want to be a galaxy. You're a galaxy. Come on up. Any Catholic priests in the audience? Yes, no, maybe so? Sir, you are Andromeda. Here, hold your little galaxy. And go down there where Dustin is, if you please. I need another volunteer. Yes. Sir, you are the Milky Way.
Sweet. Picked wisely.
God came to you. Take your galaxy and stand right over here. I need another volunteer. The Trinity. You are the priest, and you're going to start over here.
Come to the guy.
And you have to take the Catholic Church to Andromeda. You've got to bring you, the bishop, and 12 of your priests out there, because there's no other way for the succession of the church to validly be transferred. The thing is, you have 2 billion years, or 2 million years it's going to take to get there. So very slowly, start walking towards Andromeda.
And you're dead.
Okay, hold on a second, Father. Let me help you out here a little bit. Both of you ladies, please.
You already died.
But I'm going to give you some help. I've got these 2 super robots. They're beautiful, of course. They have superior powers and technology, and with the aid of them, they can fight off any demons. They've got that kind of ability. And they can move you between here and there in the space of 6 weeks. So take your robots and go to Andromeda.
And you're still alive.
Ladies and gentlemen, you kind of see the problem. In 2 million years, we could evolve back into sponges. Okay? Look at where we were 2 million years ago. In the Olduvai Desert. Pieces of monkeys. Maybe not monkeys, Lucy. Remember? So a fair God, if he wanted to do this, might give them the opportunity to abrogate physics. The angels do. So there's a way. Okay, guys, bring your galaxies back to me. Have a seat. Thank you. When people ask you what you did tonight, you tell them I was a galaxy. Or I was a super robot. Thank you, sir. Now, let me paint the picture for you a little bit, because this is a novel idea, but you can get through this in 2 minutes. Who's going to buy a book for this? And heck, I've already heard it, right? Here's the thing that we had to do in getting the books to work. We had to paint the picture that Bonaventure initiated by saying that perhaps everything we see in the physical reality is actually a reflection of the spiritual reality in which it's embedded. This is a fantastically profound idea. Consider the possibility that the sun's corona to the sun may be an analog of purgatory to heaven. Consider the possibility that the relationship between matter and energy that Einstein established might be an analog of the relationship between the flesh and the spirit in the Holy Spirit. It may be the case that all the things that we look at in our world and physics are a staging area to make us feel comfortable in eternity. It won't be an alien world. It'll all be the fervent reflections of things that we've always kind of known from this world. Catherine of Genoa said, it's not in my script, but I'll tell you anyway. She's painted a lot of our ideas of what purgatory are. One of the biggest objections that Protestants have always had to purgatory is you don't go any place other than straight to heaven when you die. We've resolved that problem by saying that purgatory is an effect that surrounds heaven that you have to go through, because it fits perfectly with Catherine of Genoa. My sins burned away as rust. That is exactly what would happen if I sent a probe into the sun. The purgative fire that surrounds the sun is 2,000 degrees at the outset. And everybody who dies says, move toward the light. And Padre Pio said, better the world would be without the sun than without the Mass, because the grace from the Mass is like the energy from the sun. So there have been enough comparisons that if you think through it a little bit, you realize there may be some things that you can thread together to make Bonaventure's statement, blended with what we know of science today, look a whole lot more likely than it did when Bonaventure wrote it. Man shares a common ancestor with the apes. Man is not descended from the apes. Therefore, there must have been a platform before Homo sapiens not quite suitable for a soul. One of the questions we deal with in the books is, could a robot ever request an eternal destiny? Well, if you're a bunch of angels in heaven before the first sin was committed, and God said one day, I'm going to build these carbon beings that are temporary, but they'll have an immortal component, they might have looked a lot like carbon machines to the angels who are purely spiritual. It is one way of looking at it. We are machines after a fashion. After a fashion. I'm not diminishing from what God did or anything in the creation. I'm simply saying we are a mechanism of sorts. And soul, but still. A printing press was used in about 1440 to 1450 to circulate the Bible. So we know, therefore, that God did use machines to evangelize the world. Could space be real estate for robots? Could the robots go out into space and do what the printing press did with the Bible? Well, the problem you have with all of space, and just in the Virgo cluster alone, there are 2,000 galaxies. One of the key dilemmas that you would run into is, maybe God only came here because we're the idiots. And everybody else out in the universe is a genius. And they have spaceships that can get here and find out about God. And we were picked because we were the idiots. And we wouldn't need to go anywhere. Or, perhaps, all he needs is one brilliant civilization to do a raster scan. Come here, get everything about God and the church, and then zip back and forth to every other galaxy spreading it. Now, of course, if that civilization wanted to do that, the demons would absolutely decide that that was a battle they could not lose. Because the earth is now effectively quarantined. The rest of the universe knows nothing about the Catholic Church, as far as we know, if there's anyone there. So the last thing they would need is Jim Kirk and Star Trek spreading the Bible to Memory Alpha. There are 33,000 Christian faiths today. So the question is, would the Catholic Church be selected by the aliens as the premium brand? Could a thorough study of logic or history win over the Catholic Church on its merits alone? I cover that in the book. And what of Satan? What maintains his primacy in hell? We believe there are 9 choirs, but we don't really know. Maybe there's a 10th choir of just one member, and that was Satan. Part of the problem is, if Satan really was the architect of all the things that God built, we can see how his influence might have been central in making a problem, because he would have, at the time before his first sin, been closest to God and had the most knowledge and awareness of the plan of man coming forward. So, bearing that in mind, and if you read much of Aquinas, you realize that the way the angels are set to communicate is between the layers of the choirs. Knowledge trickles down, but moves freely throughout the plane of a given hierarchy. If Satan was above the highest 2 hierarchies, because it's never established whether he's a seraphim or a cherubim. Maybe he's neither. But we know that he led the angelic choir. We know that he was called the light. We know that 1/3 of the angels fell because Satan fell. So one of the key and most interesting parts of all this is, if he had knowledge they didn't, and knowledge is the conveyance in heaven. I think 1 Peter 1:12 said the angels long to look. They long to have knowledge because that's the only thing they need. Perhaps Satan offered the angels an apple. I know something about what God's doing. In my opinion, men are going to disappoint God. They're going to fail. Satan never could have foreseen that God himself would become a man and bridge the gap because he loved us so much. Anyway, good discussion over a couple beers, yes? The seminal question I ask of other authors, writers, and workshop dinners, because sometimes we'll have other writers over and we'll beta read each other's stuff. And they always hate me for this. But I do it anyway. Why should someone buy your book? You wouldn't believe the answers I get. Oh, because they like the last one. That's not an answer. Why should someone buy your book? If you don't know, your readers aren't going to know. There are 3 main reasons people write books. They want to increase their personal brand. That's like the Kardashians. They want to make a whole lot of money. That's like the Kardashians. Or they're actually offering something of value. It could be Tom Sawyer. It could be a dictionary. It could be a way to evangelize people who don't believe what we do today using a more original approach. This is a tool. A tool that you can use to open up ideas and thinking that are not common. It's not the stuff they've already rejected. It's stuff they've never heard. I can't tell you how many discussions I come out of where people say, you know, I've never heard anybody say the stuff you say before. That's kind of nice. At any rate, let me go ahead and do a quick little reading of some stuff with you. Call it Rosemary. We're going to do a little bit of street theater here. I don't like just reading my own books. I like kind of acting. Is that okay? She's going to be the girl. I'm going to be the guy.
It's a good point.
And this is from book 1. Tell you what, you're the you're red, I'm black.
Okay.
Later that same afternoon, we returned out to ship. I returned to my quarters. I threw my stuff down